Welcome everyone. I'm so glad to be here tonight to talk about I'm already bumbling and fumbling to talk about Boys Life with you guys. It's going to be so much fun. I've got some passages marked and I cannot wait to hear about what you guys thought of the book. So, to anyone here who is joining me to discuss the book, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Anyone watching live or after the fact, doesn't matter. Appreciate you all. And I'm Kelsi, by the way, your host of the YouTube channel, Slime and Slasher. So I cannot wait to dive in. This is such a fantastic book. I cannot say enough great things about this book. I have been obsessed with this book since I read it in July. I actually read it the first day of July is when I started. It only took me a few days, even though it's rather long. Just flew right through and it was so enjoyable. Oh my gosh, yay, Jennifer's here. She was trying to finish the book and she did finish it in time to make the discussion. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I appreciate you. We also have Jonathan here. How you doing, Slime and Slashers? Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. And thanks everyone once again for watching. I am so jazzed, just to reiterate that again. I have a lot of strong feelings about this book. You know, this book, such a fantastic coming of age story, but it's so much more than that. It's about, life and death. It's got aspects of examining religion, racism, courage, the friendship, standing up for what's right, growing up versus, the innocence of childhood, the idea and the importance of storytelling in someone's life. Not only people who write stories, but people who listen to stories. I think that's a strong theme in the book and something that's very heavily highlighted in the book. So, guys, what did you think of the book? What rating would you give it? Jennifer, what did you give it? Lots of people on Goodreads, guys, have given this 5 stars. This has a general average rating of 4.38 stars out of 3,502 reviews, but overall out of 30,244 ratings total, which is quite a bit. So out of all those ratings, an average of 4.38, I think that's pretty high. I know some people like Sadie Hartman, who, Mother Horror, she rated it 5 stars, and she even said it replaced it as her favorite book of all time. So she said it's a pretty big thing when you read as much as her and a book blows you away like Boys Life blew her away. And that was written back in 2018 is when she wrote her review. So it's a favorite for her. I'm sure it's still a favorite. Someone in the comments on Goodreads said, this is my 3rd or 4th read. My favorite book of all time still holds up, all the stars. So yes, all the stars. Hi, Mikey Lee in the Cemetery Library. Thank you so much for joining. Melissa's here. Hey, Melissa. She gave it 5 stars. Yes. She loved it. Yay. I'm so glad you gave it 5 stars. I am really passionate about this book. Jennifer also gave it 5 stars. She says it's now in her top 5 favorite books of all time. Yes. I'm so happy to hear that, Jennifer. I'm so glad you liked it. So I actually got my mom to read this as well, and it doesn't sound like that's a big deal, but my mom does not read books that I typically read. She reads kind of like romancy books, and she would never ever pick up a horror book. And I think it fits, in with that it doesn't work as a horror book. So I don't think that it was out of her realm because of that, because it's not a horror book. Boy's Life, I think, is more of just more general fiction, but also it's got some magic realism to it too. But I definitely personally wouldn't consider it a horror book, although I think that is one of the genres listed on Goodreads. Goodreads redid their website recently, so it's all set up differently. Usually on the side of a book, it'll tell you the genres that it considers it, but now I don't see that anymore on my desktop layout. So I don't know, but I've heard that some people thought it was horror because it was categorized as horror, but I really wouldn't categorize it that way. And although it has a murder mystery running through it, I personally don't even think that's the biggest or most prominent aspect of the story. I really think that's just something that's like the general thing tying the story together, a very loose thread running throughout the story. I really do think the story has way more overarching themes, and at the core, more than just a coming of age story, it's really an examination of a small town. And man, I just love how McCammon had all these little events. Like, it's hard to describe this book to someone who hasn't read it because you could easily say, yeah, well, it's not horror and it's coming of age. But when you tell them there's a murder mystery, but really it's all these events that are unrelated, but actually they become related because McCammon so masterfully weaves the events into each other. So, for instance, I've got examples here. I've got, let's see, for instance, they're at Easter Sunday Mass, and these swarm of wasps come down from the ceiling and start stinging people and stuff. And Corey, our main character, his one of his grandpas runs out, and that makes a big impression on Corey. Corey says, like, I can't believe he just left us here, my other grandpa and my dad, to just fend for ourselves. And it really obviously impacted him and affected how he felt about courage and his strong feelings about showing courage. And that came up later in the story when his dad was either going to help take this gangster into the train station or not. The dad was battling with, should I go? It's dangerous, or should I not go? Corey's mom didn't want the dad to go, but Corey thought that the right thing was to go and to help get this guy put away. So I just thought that was so fascinating. That little thing with the wasp and seeing his grandpa run away had such a bigger meaning to the story because it comes back up later. And there's all these instances of that too. For instance, my favorite instance of things connecting is when they go to the carnival. So Corey and his friends, they go off to the carnival, which is a great scene, by the way. They talk about haunted houses and all this awesome stuff. Very, very vivid imagery in that scene. You could just imagine the setting, perfectly done and written. And that's my favorite part of the story too, overall, is just the writing. The way the writing is. It's beautiful. It's so well done. You could just imagine everything McCammon's writing out. You're like, oh, I could see this in my head. It's so beautiful. It's laying it out right in front of us. It's perfectly done. But at the carnival, one of the things that the boys go do, they see this big creature, and it's advertised as a dinosaur, and the dinosaur's keeper is really mean and is beating the poor beast, and he's just treating them horribly, and he's stuck in this little cage, and it really affects the character of Davy Ray. Now, this is a big spoiler, so I am going to talk about spoilers in this. So later on, Corey's getting into trouble, and Davy Ray, we think, is the one who freed the dinosaur. So the dinosaurs run around in the streets months later after the carnival's over because Davy Ray freed it. He's running around, and Corey is in this car chase, and the rhino hits the car, and it makes the plot go forward, let's say. And so to me, that's such a huge part of the story, is this rhino almost like sent from Davy Ray, kind of metaphorically, to help Corey. And I love that. I love that. It's such a great connection. So I was basically at the part with the wasps when McCammon was just describing the wasps. Like, it was on another level, the way you would never think someone just describing a wasp attack is that entertaining, but somehow it was entertaining. And that was the part in the story. And that's about 70 pages in, I think. 71 pages in. That's when I put down the book and I told my boyfriend Paul, I said, I think this is going to be my favorite book of all time. If this turns out the way I think it does, if this keeps being as strong as it is right now, I was like, I am loving this book. Like, I am blown away. So 71 pages in, out of a 500 plus page book, I was already saying it was blowing me away. So what did you guys love about it? Favorite characters, your in-depth thoughts, favorite scene? Hey, we've got Cool Gamer joining us. Hi, how you doing? Really appreciate you being here. Just talking about the fantastic book, Boy's Life. I've got some quotes marked at the top. So the difference between the side tabs and the top tabs are, obviously, I'm not going to read you guys every single tab here. The top tabs are the ones that, like, if I have time, I might want to go back and read some of the ones I tabbed at the top. Because to me, those are the prominent, the very important, like, super eloquent and elegant overall quotes or meaningful quotes. Jennifer agrees with me. She says, the brilliance of this writing and how McCammon weaves these small events into the narrative is amazing. I know. It's like, that's why it's hard to describe, because you tell people, like, all these small things happen, but it doesn't sound like a great story when you're describing it that way, but the way they connect together, it's like he had it all laid out so perfectly. And even the character of Vernon, like each character in the town is so rich, and there's so many characters. So you got Vernon, this weird dude walking around with no clothes on. You've got even Corey's parents, they're so well fleshed out. And his friends like Ben, and you feel for Ben. So here's another thing that ties in. So they go and see this movie, and it's like an outer space movie, and it freaks all the kids out. And later on, the premise of the movie that they saw in the theater, they were like, oh, you know, people are going to be replaced and they're going to look like their same old selves, but they're going to be aliens. So the kids are all freaked out. They're thinking that one day their parents could be replaced by aliens and they'd never know. And Corey's sleeping over at his friend Ben's house, and he keeps saying, my dad's going to come back home changed. My dad's going to come back home changed. Corey thought he was talking about the movie, but what Ben was referencing was his dad was going to go out drinking and come back mean as hell and unpleasant and scary. And at the end of the night, Corey comes to realize he wasn't talking about the movie. He was talking about like the way his dad changes after he starts drinking and loses control. And even that little part, it just had such a bigger meaning. It wasn't just them going to a movie, and it never was any importance later in the story. And now it was soon after the part at Ben's house where he said the thing about his dad changing. It wasn't that long after they had described the scene in the movies, but it still was a small thing that connected to another thing later on. And even further, I think later on, there was this guy preaching about how he hated rock and roll music. And Corey's like, I expected to look at the back of his head and see an X there. And that was what the replaced aliens in the movie, they would have an X on the back of their head, like their head, and that means that they were an alien, not a real life person. So it even came back like into the story hundreds of pages later. They still referenced the movie, and I was like, this is so good. The barber shop story where Corey and his dad are getting their hair cut, and they're hearing the story about the candy stick kid. And then that comes back up later when they're trying to put the gangster in jail, get him sent off to jail. And he comes out, the barber guy who told the story about how he was once the candy stick kid, he comes out and he's like, facing the gangster. So hundreds of pages later, it comes back into play. Personally, in terms of favorite character, I had a real connection with Corey, so I can't leave him out. I think he's a fantastic main character. Wonderful narrator. I love how he was a writer, so that brought a lot of other elements into the story. It allowed for some of the magical realism in the story to make extra sense because, writers, they, flourish things, they exaggerate a little bit, but it's just making things a little bit more flowery, a little bit nicer sounding. So I think Corey becoming a writer later in life really made sense in my point of view. But I do really like the lady quite a bit. I loved her. Williams Library says, I guess the lady saves the novel because one booktuber mentioned the absence of, or at least not enough female characters. I never felt that way. I wasn't like, oh, it's called A Boy's Life and there's all these boys in there. I thought Corey's mom was a wonderful character. So that's one strong female character because she stood up to racism. When everyone was like kind of racist in the town, Corey's mom helped out an older gentleman when they were trying to save, the bad part of town. Everyone else is like, oh, we don't want to be helping. Corey's mom stood up for what she believed in. She helped him no matter what the person's skin color was. But also the lady was a great main character too, who was a strong woman character. So yeah, the lady, but I think Corey's mom is just as big of a part in the story. And she was very, very awesome of a character. So I liked her. There was the girl that Corey had a crush on. There was what did he call her? The demon, the little girl who would kind of play tricks on him, but Corey was still nice to her. And at the end, one of my favorite parts of the book is how Corey talks about his daughter. And then he says, where is it? It's so wonderful. It's at the very, very end. Hold on. Oh, wait, sorry. I'm going way past the ending here. It's basically where he says, because it's a girl's life too. So he's basically saying, like, it's a boy's life, but it's also a girl's life. It's really about childhood of, no matter what gender you are. Hi, Kelly. How you doing? Kelly read this last year. I think you gave it, I saw it on Goodreads, Kelly. I think you gave it a 4-star rating, which is pretty pretty high for you because I know you don't always like character driven stories. So you must have thought there was enough going on to keep you entertained. I don't know. What'd you think about it, Kelly? I did. I mean, I personally, I thought the lady was such a great character. Like, in fact, she was definitely a favorite. Jennifer says the lady's one of her favorites too. I mean, she was so like lovely and wise, and I don't know. I thought she had a lot of character too, and I liked the Moon Man who was with her. Oh, and how she had a little handyman who worked for her and she sent him off to try to help Corey and his family. But she also was so badass, pardon my French, but she was so awesome, let's say, that she sent her handyman to go try to save this guy who was trapped with the bomb. And the dude was racist and he tried to bomb them. How's that for karma, by the way? This dude is literally trying to bomb a public place, and yet he ends up through some stroke of fate, he is in this terrible situation where he's stuck with a bomb near his home and he's got to be saved by the very people he was trying to endanger. I just think that even though, he really put their lives at risk, the lady and the handyman, they were just like, okay, we're going to help anyway. I don't know, such good people, so big of them. And there's just so much innocence in this story. And I personally like that. I know not everyone loves coming of age stories, and this is what Kelly is saying, that she's not a huge fan of coming of age, but she says she thinks the ending saved it for her. The very, very end, when Corey sees his dad, like he goes to his old house and he sees like the shadow of his dad standing on the porch, and he like talks to him like in his mind. Oh, that made me cry. And so I was rereading my tabs today just to see if there were things that I wanted to mention and things that I could leave off even though I had tabbed them. And the very last page, I reread it again and I was like, damn it, I'm crying again. Like, it got me once again. So good. Yes, and Jennifer agrees the grace shown by the lady and Mr. Lightfoot was powerful. And in fact, I love there's a line about grace, about how you can leave something that you love behind and do it and be happy about it. Like, there's a line about courage in the book. Like, it was so beautiful. And if you want to talk about things that pulled at your heartstrings, let's just talk about Rebel, the dog, for a second. And that whole series of scenes with him where first, Corey thinks he's going to die. They take him to the vet and Corey prays death away. And then he's almost like a Frankenstein type of monster. Like, he's not his same old self. He's prolonged his life unnaturally, and that's what Corey feels like. And he comes to regret that he prayed death away, and then he starts crying at the table and saying, I made a mistake, I should have never done this. But Corey's dad is just like, it's never too late to fix something if you want to set it right enough. And it's just like, oh, so many good quotes. I mean, so many good quotes. Jennifer said, I cried so many times with this book. I know, me too. Like, the rebel part really got me. Just how powerfully it affected Corey and how much he was praying for Rebel to survive, but then how it all unfolded. Just masterful. I mean, this is unlike any other coming of age book I have ever read. I mean, I know some like Kelly, not everyone likes coming of age. I think, at a point like now, my friend Juan over at Plagued by Visions, check out his YouTube channel. Even he has said this. Right now, coming of age and like 80s nostalgia is so heavy. What I love about Boy's Life, it's not set in the 80s. It's set in like the 60s. And even though I didn't live during that time, somehow the stories still felt relevant and relatable to me. And that is another sign of just masterful writing, that McCammon can make this story universal. It doesn't matter that a lot of people watching probably too, grew up at a later time, the 80s, the 90s versus the 50s, 60s. I just think it's really just easy to get what McCammon is saying and to relate to Corey as a character, as he is basically on the cusp of adulthood, with those last few years of childhood magic and innocence. Melissa said that part with Rebel made me cry so much. Like, I know. It was so sad. CS says, heyo, hey, how you doing? Thank you so much for being here. And I will say, I do want to point out another great thing that tied in during the Rebel stuff is when Rebel is still alive and he's kind of being kept alive unnaturally, Corey thinks he sees like a ghost boy in the yard. And this is on Halloween. And there's a passage during the Halloween scene that is just like awesome about ghosts and ghouls. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so well written. But even past that, so Corey referenced, or Corey slash McCammon, who actually wrote it, referenced earlier in the story about this awesome, not this awesome, this terrible experience. It's just awesome that it ties in, is what I'm trying to say. He mentioned this terrible event where a neighbor down the street was burned alive, and the neighbor, when he was still alive, used to come over and pet Rebel and always say, like, I wish I had a dog. And so Corey sees his ghost outside petting Rebel. And it's just so like powerful that like that character was just a mention of somebody who had burned up. It was kind of like Corey talking about stuff in the neighborhood. It came up like you didn't necessarily know it was going to be important. And someone just reading a book wouldn't necessarily think, okay, it's going to tie in later. But somehow McCammon made it work and pop up later, and it's still it fit in. It was perfect. And I was surprised by how many characters I remembered. Usually I get kind of intimidated with so many characters, like who is this, who is that? But everyone was so distinct and unique in here. It really wasn't a problem to keep people to like apart, to distinguish people from each other. I just thought it was marvelous. Any other favorite characters, guys? Any favorite quotes? Any favorite scenes specifically? I mean, there are so many great scenes. If I had to pick a favorite scene, it's so difficult. Like I said, though, I do love the carnival part and how much Davy Ray cared about the dinosaur that was trapped. I thought that was really powerful, and how it was pretty obvious to Corey that Davy Ray went and let out the dinosaur. And I love that because it showed such compassion, like that he didn't want a creature pent up for his whole life. And of course, that's so understandable. Who would want that? Jennifer says every character is so fleshed out. Like, I know. I can't believe I got my mom to read this when she usually just reads romances. And like I said, although it's not a horror story, and she's apt to read anything that's not horror, she really just sticks to romance. So to get her to kind of go out of her comfort zone and read this was a big deal to me. And she called me and she was like, I read this so fast. I read this in 3 days. And that's basically how many days I took to read it. And basically, I thought this was going to take me at least a week, but I was just flying through it. But when I got to the end, I was seriously sad because I did not want it to be over. I was crying. I was like, no, no. So when I was done reading this, I said, can anything by anybody else or even by Robert McCammon himself measure up to this? Now, this is still my favorite book of all time after all the books I read since the beginning of July till now. It's not that long since I read this, but still, I've read quite a few great books since reading this, including another McCammon book. Now, it doesn't surpass Boy's Life, but the McCammon book that I read this month in August, it's called Mystery Walk, and I loved it too. And so I got to the end of Mystery Walk and I cried then too, because there was like a wonderful emotional ending and it had characters that made you care. And so I got to the end, I put it down, I had tears, and I said to myself, McCammon, you fiend, you did it again. You made me feel. You got me. Like, you got me as in you made me cry again. Oh, it was marvelous. Because when a book can make you feel, it's just a special thing. Not every book makes me emotional. Some books that have been hard to read in terms of horror, it's more like sad in terms of, oh, this is terrible that this happened to somebody. This is, heart-wrenching in terms of it's sickening, it's terrible. I feel for the people because they're going through bad things. This was more of like a nostalgia, sadness, poignant story, more about that experience, but also relating myself to the characters. Usually in a horror story, I'm not necessarily relating to the characters in that I could see myself in them all the time. Whereas Corey, I could see myself in Corey and in his friends and even in other characters of the town. Kelly says, I want to read more from him eventually. Gotta be in the mood for a chunker. His books do seem to be a little bit more hefty. I am really excited. Mystery Walk was also a 5-star read, but as I said, a little bit like less special than Boy's Life. But I think Boy's Life is just a once in a lifetime type of novel in terms of very few novels I think can be this impactful. So amazing. Oh, this is a great comment. Jennifer says, I cried when Corey's first bike was taken to the junkyard. It made me sad in a way I couldn't understand because I saw how there is an end to all things, no matter how much we want to hold on to them. Yeah. When he says, that's literally the line he says, Jennifer. That's perfect. Yeah. It made me sad in a way I couldn't understand because I saw how there is an end to all things, no matter how much we want to hold on to them. Like that line alone. It's genius. I'm sorry. Like I get freaked out in terms of I'm spazzing out. I'm getting so excited because it's just so beautiful writing. And I'm going to compare him to Stephen King, and just bear with me for a second because it's going to seem like a random comparison, but I've got a reason. Even though I think McCammon's less of a horror writer than Stephen King is, I think it's still a cool comparison. So, King is so popular. People applaud King for a lot of his works. King also writes chunkers, long books, obviously. I think King is great with imagery. I think he's amazing at crafting out these just very intricate sentences. He has a beautiful way with words. Even when he's writing pure horror, like in it, there's some like appalling things in terms of monsterish stuff and terrifying stuff, but it's still effective and it's still sometimes described in a beautiful, very elegant way in terms of the wordage he's using. McCammon, it's the same way, but it's more less wordy, more pure, more readable in a way, if that makes sense. It kind of also reminds me of Ray Bradbury, but in a more approachable way of writing. Because reading Ray Bradbury is a little difficult. I feel like his language can be so flowery that sometimes it's difficult to get through, whereas McCammon, it's beautiful, but at the same time, it's not difficult to read. It's not like hard to understand words or phrases. It just rolls off the tongue. It's poetic in a way, the way, like, just that line that Jennifer quoted. I mean, beautiful. I mean, I quoted so much stuff in here. Like I want to read you guys, since we're approaching fall. I think this is perfectly thematic to highlight this scene about Halloween. The seasons of ghosts came upon us. It was not just that Halloween loomed close at hand and that the cardboard boxes of silky costumes and plastic masks appeared on the shelves at Woolworths along with glittery magic wands, rubber pumpkin heads, witches' hats, and spiders jingling on black webs. It was a feeling in the crisp twilight air. It was a hush across the hills. The ghosts were gathering themselves, building up their strength to wander the fields of October and speak to those who would listen. So good, so good. I mean, I just love it so much. And I'm not going to repeat this line because I basically quoted this on page 2 of my copy here, which is my reading copy. I've got 2 other copies of Boy's Life, but I quoted in my review on my July wrap up, my reading wrap up, I quoted page 2 about how he talks about how we all have magic inside of us. When we become an adult, it withers, and that sometimes people who are adults scoff at us. They try to beat it out of us because they're ashamed of what they let diminish in themselves, like basically sad that they let the magic go. And I was like, oh, that's on page 2, and I'm paraphrasing that, but I already quoted that in my wrap up, as I said. So I'm not going to quote it here, but he goes on to talk about, and again, I knew on page 2, I was like, holy cow, like this is incredible already on page 2. How can this go wrong? I had good feelings right away. I just started reading and I said, this is my jam. Like, this is my jam. And you could just see how happy, like, talking about this book made me. My boyfriend Paul is like, when I asked my mom to read it, he's like, please read it. Like, she's asking everyone to read it. And he's like, you love Boy's Life. I'm like, yes, yes. Mr. Morningstar is joined. Hi, how you doing? He said, sounds really beautiful. Have you read more from him yet since you love this one? Yes, I just was saying I read Mystery Walk, which is also set in the South. So this is set in Alabama. Mystery Walk is also set in the South, and it's got more horror imagery, but I still wouldn't classify Mystery Walk as pure horror, just like I wouldn't classify Boy's Life as pure horror either. I think both are more fiction stories with elements of, horror. Boy's Life less so. Boy's Life, more magical realism. Mystery Walk, magical realism, but also some horrific elements and some scary imagery. And great story. Awesome characters in both cases, though. Jennifer says her book is lit up with tabs and the imagery is brilliant in this novel. I know, I know. I mean, I don't even know what to read you guys like next, but on page 2, he talks about going away from the magic. After you go so far away from it, though, you can't really get it back. You can have seconds of it, just seconds of knowing and remembering. When people get weepy at movies, it's because in that dark theater, the golden pool of magic is touched, just briefly. Then they come out into the hard sun of logic and reason again, and it dries up, and they're left feeling a little heart sad and not knowing why. When a song stirs a memory, when motes of dust turning in a shaft of light takes your attention from the world. When you listen to a train passing on a track at night in the distance and wonder where it might be going, you step beyond who you are and where you are. For the briefest of instants, you have stepped into the magic realm. Lovely, lovely. I'm sorry, but it's lovely. And, you know, Corey's dad later on talking about you never know how things are going to turn out, though, and that's the truth. You aim for one place sure as an arrow, but before you hit the mark, the wind gets you. I don't believe I ever met one person who became what they wanted to be when they were your age. Just I love this book. I love this book so much. And I gotta say, there's a wonderful. This is one of my favorite quotes in the entire book. This might be my favorite quote. It seemed to me at an early age that all human communication, whether it's TV, movies, or books, begins with somebody wanting to tell a story. That need to tell, to plug into a universal socket, is probably one of our grandest desires, and the need to hear stories, to live lives other than our own, for even the briefest moment, is the key to the magic that was born in our bones. It's like perfect. It's so perfect. Oh, Mr. Morningstar, thank you so much. Oh my God, you didn't have to do that. I really appreciate that, Mr. Morningstar. You were too sweet. Oh my God, you're too sweet. I can't thank you enough. That makes me bashful. Thank you. I'm going to turn up my ring light here because I'm looking blue. Jennifer says, I grew up in a small town in Alabama, born in 1975, and now live in another small town in Alabama. This book is my childhood. It resonates with me. I'm so glad it touched your heartstrings and that you could relate to it. But I honestly think that anybody who grew up at any time could just relate to that innocence, that pureness of just being a kid and still having this wide-eyed sense of wonder, if that makes sense. And I love how, you know, the novel isn't all sugar-coated. We get death. We get the grim reality of things. We get this murder mystery. So there is some tension in the book. And I'm glad. And we also get a peek at the racism, which obviously is huge in the South back then in the 60s, but now it's still a big thing. As someone who lives in the South, trust me, it sucks. It's still a prominent thing, obviously, everywhere, which is a crying shame. It's really unacceptable, but it is what it is, unfortunately. But I love how the book addresses that in such a poetic way. And I want to tell you guys about this really cool story I learned about on Robert McCammon's website. Oh, and by the way, another cool thing is follow Robert McCammon on Facebook because the guy who runs his page is really cool. He also runs his website. So the guy who runs both the website and the Facebook page shared my July wrap up and my book review of Boy's Life, where I said, oh, I have a new favorite book of all time. And it was a standalone review. So he shared both of my videos on Robert McCammon's Facebook page. And I was blown away and so ecstatic that he shared it. I was like, oh my God, no. And so grateful that he shared it on the page. But so one, that is cool and really awesome that the page shared it, but two, Robert McCammon is just the coolest. And here is something to cement my point. And it's not an opinion, it is a fact, because so I think it was in 2006, if I remember correctly. I just read this article, and again, I found this on Robert McCammon's website. So in 2006, there was a parent group who were trying to get Boy's Life banned from a school. It was like on a list of books that were going to be discussed about being taken away and banned. Again, this is not like in the 90s. This is in like early 2000s, I believe. And I believe it was a school in Florida. And so McCammon found out about this, I think through social media or something. And although he didn't live in Florida, he flew in because they were going to have a committee meeting. So he's at the committee meeting, and there's video of this, and there's also a transcript of it. So you don't have to watch the video, but I watched the video. There's video of him going up and giving like a speech. He has a written out speech that he asked if it was okay if he could read to defend boys' life. And he even said, like in this article I read, he said he felt like he had to go because they were trying to like taint the book and to make it something it wasn't. So the whole reason behind them wanting to ban it, by the way, was because there are some characters that curse. And yes, there are curse words in the book. And when I told my mom this story, she was like, there wasn't cursing in the book. I'm like, there was. But it was bad guys. Like, I think when Corey has that dream that he's on a train and he leaves town and he's seeing all like the seedy ways of life, one of the guys I think says, put up your hands, mother effer, or give me the money, mother effer, or something like that. Someone says mother effer. Someone says, I think shithead. Anyway, those were the two examples I think one of the parents gave to try to ban the book. So McCammon comes down for this meeting and he defends the book. He comes and he reads. And the coolest part it's just the way he read this speech about, he discussed why he wanted to write Boy's Life, about he wanted to write a story where there was clear good guys and clear bad guys, how there was a book which, there was no gray area. Like, sometimes being the bad guy can be a cool thing. Like if you look at professional wrestling, especially like later professional wrestling, the bad wrestler sometimes can be the cool guy to like or whatever. And then later you got your anti-heroes. I mean, even Walter White, for like in Breaking Bad, for instance, the TV show I'm referencing, or Saul Goodman, Better Call Saul just ended this week. You root for those guys, even though they're bad guys. They are technically like the anti-hero, but somehow we can't really dislike them. So McCammon wanted to write a book where there's like pure good guys. The good guy still wears the white hat. The bad guy wears the black hat. He described this in his speech, but then he also described how he didn't really write this intended for children. It just so happened that this book connected with a young audience. And he said that he's gotten countless letters and, communications from fans all over the world, from tons of young people saying how much this book touched them, how they related to this book, that even though they weren't alive back then, that they still related to what he was saying. And he even went on to say, some people wanted to become writers because of him. And he said, I wish I had time to read you all of the letters, but if it's okay with your permission, can I read you this one letter? And he reads this one letter, and it's from a girl who says, do you have any advice? What would you take in college? Do you have a favorite writer? You Would Be Mine. Boy's Life is my favorite book of all time. I've read it 3 times. I love your writing. Do you ever feel bummed out about writing? Because sometimes I write and I come back and read what you wrote for inspiration, and I find myself feeling sad because I'll never write that good. And then he, like in points when he's reading her letter, he starts to get emotional. You can hear it. And I'm like, I love this author. I love this author. I was like, he is my favorite. I only read 2 books, but I'm already like, he's my favorite. Sometimes you just know. I mean, sometimes you just have like this feeling. And from other things, people I know who have read other books by him, I just know that I'm going to like more books by him. My good friend Nathan, his name is Nathaniel Toll. He's also an author, and he wrote a book called Pumpkin Cinema, which is about the best movies to watch for Halloween. Again, Pumpkin Cinema, best movies for Halloween. Please check it out. Nathaniel Toll, he's wonderful. And he told me long ago, like a year and a half ago, that his favorite book was Boy's Life. Because I've been saying for a year myself that I've been wanting to read Boy's Life. And as soon as I said that on a video, he messaged me and said, Kelsi, that's my favorite book. You're going to love it, I hope. And I think. So his English teacher, I believe, Nathan told me this story. His English teacher would give personalized recommendations to everyone in the class. And so he met with Nathan and he was like, I think you'd like Boy's Life. So here, read Boy's Life. And he was right. Nathan loved it. And Nathan also loved Gone South. And he loves Swan Song. And Swan Song is going to be the first book I read in 2023. I cannot wait. Like, it's going to be the very first book I pick up. And it's a coincidence. Like, I'm not reading it because it's my birthday month, but January is when my birthday is. It's January 13th. And so it's going to be really fun that I get to read it in the month that my birthday falls in. It'll be like a little birthday treat because I got to tell you, So I was like rushing through my July TBR after I read Boy's Life. I still had lots of big books to read. I had It by Stephen King, which you guys know is an 1,000+ page book. I had a book called Toady by Mark Morris that was 700 pages, which, by the way, I love Toady. Toady is underrated as hell, and that is a pure horror book. That is a wonderful book. Not perfect, but close to perfect. Toadie's wonderful. I can't recommend it enough. Just like Boy's Life, really fun, really relatable characters, but Toadie's more horror centric, whereas Boy's Life is not horror, in my opinion. Anyway, I had a lot of long books, is the point. I rushed through everything. I was like rushing. I was like, maybe if I finish early enough, I could start another McCammon book. And so I did start Mystery Walk at the end of July, beginning of August. Because I really wanted to get to another one that quickly. And that's how much I liked it. And it was so enjoyable. At first, there was a character I didn't like that much in Mystery Walk. And I was like, oh no, am I not going to like this character? And I thought he was going to be a prominent like narrator. But no, the point of view in the novel changed from different people. But also, the character actually, my feelings about him changed. So yeah, and in a good way. So things played out in an awesome way, and I really like how Mystery Walk developed, and I gave it, like I said earlier, 5 stars. Ugh. So I keep snapping. I'm sorry. So good. I don't know why I'm snapping. It's hard not to snap. I am so excited I can't even speak. It's just such a wonderful, wonderful story. Guys, have you read any other books by McCammon? If you're here and already have read Boy's Life, I want to know what you've read by him. What did you like? What should I read next? Because I do plan on reading something in September, but I don't know what yet. I was thinking Baal, Baal. I don't know if I'm saying it exactly right, but I believe that's the way you say it. It's his first published book, and I know he's not too fond of his first 4 books, but I've heard they're like he's kind of harsh on them, and some people have told me that they like his first 4 books. Like my friend Rachel, she read Baal, and she read, well, Usher's Passing is one that McCammon is proud of, but I don't think Baal is one that he particularly loves because he was still learning his craft. I actually watched an interview where he did say, like, his first one, it was hard because he was learning, like, how to write a novel as he was writing his first novel. Like, usually people write a novel and it gets denied, it doesn't get published, and then they start, something else. Whereas he wrote one, it ended up getting published, and so everyone got to see his progress. And I know Kelly read Bethany's Sin with her book club. She said it was okay, but not great. And my friend Alex, the bookubus, said the same thing. And I think that's definitely one of the ones McCammon's not super proud of either, because it's one of his first 4. It's Baal, Nightboat, Bethany's Sin, and what other one? There's one more. Oh, They Thirst. I believe those are his first 4. Mystery Walk was his 5th. So I read Mystery Walk because I was like, well, it's the first one he was proud of. I don't know at what point. I think at a certain point he's okay with all of them because he's allowed them to be republished, because you could find them all on digital copies on Amazon now. But at a point, like, he pulled them, I think, from being reprinted. So and I know he said on some kind of interview that, like, he didn't like the first 4 that much. But yeah, Bethany's Sin I've heard mixed things about, but I've actually heard decent things about They Thirst, Baal, and Nightboat. I haven't really known anybody to read Nightboat, so I don't know what anyone's opinion on that one is. So anyway, I just thought the book banning conversation and that he flew there to defend his book just showed that he cared about his work. He cared about the young people who related to his work. And it also showed when he got emotional that he connected to his fans and that he's touched by people relating to his work, which I thought was so special. And I want to go back to how I started to compare him with King and Ray Bradbury. I just think McCammon's very easy to read, but he's still got like an elegance, and his writing is elevated. It's not like, when you read so much horror, you come across a lot of trashy writing. I mean, I gotta say, and I know you guys know what I'm talking about, when you're reading a lot of vintage stuff especially, rarely do you come across something older that is pretty elegant and sophisticated. And I feel like McCammon does that so well with Boy's Life. But again, it's not horror, but Mystery Walk was kind of dipping its toe into horror, and that one was elegant too. It had some wonderful phrasing and wonderful sequences and scenes. Melissa said she's read mine and it was pretty good. It's more of a thriller. I'm planning on reading Usher's Passing in September or October. Oh, I hope you read it in October, Melissa, because I'm going to be rereading it in October. I have definite plans to read it in October because I hear it's very thematic and awesome. She says she loves the pumpkin cover and hoping for fall vibes. I've heard that it does have fall vibes. Kelly says I have mine sitting on the shelf waiting to be read. I've heard good things about mine, that it's like kind of tense and exciting. So I haven't found a lot of Robert McCammon's work in the wild, but I found a few months ago this wonderful hardcover copy of Usher's Passing. It's a first printing. I could kiss it. I wish it was signed though. I basically decided if I could meet any author, I would really want it to be Robert McCammon, and if I could get anything signed by an author, I would want it to be Robert McCammon. I know this obsession has really quickly developed, but I don't know. I can't tell you guys why. It just struck a chord with me and it touched my heart. It's just wonderful. Oh, Mikey says, we were talking about this ridiculous. I'm reading a book by William W. Johnstone right now. Speaking of trashy writing, we're talking the complete opposite of Boy's Life. So the book's called The Uninvited. It is about killer roaches. And it's not that the subject matter is uber trashy, even though animal attack books are basically usually trashy. But I read The Nest by Gregory A. Douglas a year or so ago. That was actually kind of poetic in some ways. It actually had some wonderful language in it. The Uninvited by Johnstone, however, it's also about roaches, but it is not elegant in any way. But Mikey's referencing there was something about this crazy description about an orgy, and he used the term like doing somebody dog fashion. Sophisticated like the term dog fashion. So we were talking about that in my Discord. So guys, this read, Boy's Life, we read this for my book club. If you guys want to participate in future book club reads and you're not joined on my Discord, the link is in the video description below. So you could always click that link and join in on the Discord. I will be joined by my friend Kelly, who is in the chat right now. Kelly Hooked on Books, check out her YouTube channel. She'll be joining me next month at the beginning of September to discuss Within These Walls by, I don't know if it's Anaya or Anya. Everyone else but me says Anya Alborn. But anyway, it's either Anaya Alborn or Anya Alborn, but the book is Within These Walls. It's a cult book, and Kelly's going to join me to talk about it. I'm so excited. So thank you, Kelly, for being here and for coming up with the idea of co-hosting with me. I love you. You're the best. And Kelly says The Nest was very fancy with the death scenes. And that's what I loved about it. I like other animal attack books, but no other animal attack book is as fancy with the gore as The Nest was. Mr. Morningstar says kitten fashioned is much more elegant than dog fashioned. Yes, it's ridiculous. Trust me, the scene that I'm referencing in The Uninvited by Johnstone is terrible. And it's written so terribly, like the whole time. And it's the second book I've read by Johnstone. The first one is Toy Cemetery, and that one is notorious for being terrible. And it is. Trust me. I have a whole vlog up for Toy Cemetery. I do recommend reading it because it is so bonkers and it makes no sense, to where you're just like every couple of pages, it's a little too long, but every couple of pages you're like, what? Totally the opposite of Boy's Life. Boy's Life is just a feast for the eyes. It's, stuff to ponder over. The Uninvited and Toy Cemetery, not so much. But yeah, Mikey, you're making me laugh. That was just, I had to share it with my Discord earlier today, so you guys can go see what I was referencing. It's in my little Garb August channel on my Discord that I have set up right now. All right, guys, please, if you haven't dropped your rating below, please drop it below. If you haven't dropped your favorite line or your favorite character, I really want to know, did you have a part where you didn't agree with something that happened in the book, or a part you would have changed? Like, I know my mom mentioned how she didn't necessarily like how Corey stood up to his teacher, even though the teacher was kind of abusing him. He did kind of like smack her glasses off, which I was surprised that Corey did that. But at the same time, if you're going through so much verbal abuse and like someone spewing it in your face over and over again, I can understand him like not being able to hold back any longer. But at the same time, I was just surprised that Corey as a character went there and knocked her glasses off, and that he didn't want to apologize. But I thought it was good that it kind of gave an excuse to have a scene where Corey wasn't getting along with his parents, because otherwise he pretty much got along with his parents the entire book. And so to me, it's a little bit realistic that at times kids have some tension with their parents over something, or another. And so I thought that was realistic. And I thought it was realistic too that, you might have a teacher that's really mean to you and is pretty hard on you. Yay, Mindy's here. Hi, Mindy. Check out our YouTube channel, Mindy's Book Journey. I'm pointing to the wrong end of the screen. She says 5 stars. It's her favorite read of 2021. Yay, Mindy. I'm so glad you liked it. Again, I don't know. I can't fathom someone reading this and hating it. Like, I know some people have done these videos. Have you guys seen this where people, I know my friend Amy over at Amy Noel Reads, she did a video where she says reading negative reviews for books I love. And so she goes to Goodreads and she reads like negative stuff about books that she loves. Someone said, where is it? Someone called it trash, and they were an author. Is it here? No, I don't want to see who said it was trash. I was like, how could they say it was trash? And then I thought to myself, I should have done that video topic where someone reads negative reviews, and I was like appalled that this dude. Yeah, like someone says DNF at 28%, extremely well written, but it's so boring. See, I know some people who don't like character-driven stories, and I guess I could see them thinking it was a little too slow paced. Like, I know Kelly said the ending saved it for her. I'm sure, Kelly, you probably thought it was too long, but I don't think it was outright boring. But of course, I loved it. So I'm at the right person to ask or whatever. But this person says, I can't believe this is the same author who wrote Swan Song and Mystery Walk. This attempt at being thoughtful and meaningful is long-winded and boring. Wrong! You're just wrong. You're wrong. I'm sorry. It's not even an opinion. It's wrong. I read Mystery Walk, and I think it's, like, you could definitely tell it's the same author. I mean, there's heart in both of them. And Mystery Walk is kind of the same idea that, like, all these little things happen and develop, but there's a bigger twist in Mystery Walk, I think, is the big difference. And there's more horror. Kelly says she did the audio, so that helped. And, I did the audio. At first, I was just going to read it, but then I listened to the audio, and it was so beautifully narrated. I was like, heck yeah. The narration was lovely. I can't even remember the guy's name, but he just narrated it so wonderfully. And so I should look it up. I really should. But anyway, I'll have to look it up later. The way he spoke, he just did a great job. And so I did like the audio as well, but I think I would have liked it either way, because I read a good 150 pages without the audio, and I could have kept going, but I just liked the guy's voice so much that I kept going with listening to it while I was reading. I do think the problem is with people who might think it's boring or might think it's, quote, trash. But even if you think it's boring, how could you say the writing itself is trash? And the person who wrote that was an author. And I can't find that one, of course. I saw it before Goodreads changed their whole format. But anyway, to me, I just don't know how you could say it was trash. I maybe could understand someone who doesn't like that type of story or who was thinking it was going to be horror would think it's a little slow. But otherwise, I just can't see thinking that it's bad per se. And Jennifer even said, like, I wonder if, like, some of these people thought it was horror and that's why they gave these low reviews or whatever. Melissa says, I loved all the parts with Lucifer the monkey. Loved how, even though the book was very touching and heartfelt, made me cry, there were a lot of parts that made me laugh out loud too. Me too. In fact, like the wasp part where he was calling like the wasp like like demons. Like if anyone was made in the image of the devil, it'd be wasps. Like it's not this or not that. And I literally, like, that is when I knew I was gonna love this book. Was 70 pages in with the wasp. Well, I knew on page 2, but I really knew by page 70. I was like, yes, these and like, who cares about wasps stinging people? But for some reason it connected, and I was like, I love this scene, and I laughed out loud because I just thought the descriptions were great. And him talking about, I really got grossed out when he was talking about the demon, the little girl with the pigtails, like picking her nose and like touching Corey's neck, and I was like, oh. So like even like that part got to me, and I was like, oh, that was sick. Melissa says so much happened in the book. I can't believe people thought it was boring. But that's the thing, like so much happened, but at the same time, I guess you could kind of say that not a lot happened in terms of it's all these little events that don't automatically seem important, but they become important as the book goes on. The writing is beautiful. I'll die on this hill. I will die on this hill as well. Like I will battle people to the death. No, just kidding. But I will stand up for this book forever. And I just can't believe, by the way, the mom who tried to ban this book, or one of the people who tried to ban it, didn't even read the whole thing. It was listed on a list. They got these quotes out of context. Anyone who would read this book and think that it's inappropriate for kids just because of a few curse words is out of their mind, because it's about so much more. It's got so many life lessons woven into the story, and it's got so much consideration into the story about, meaningful discussion about friendship, like as I said earlier in the beginning, racism, religion, like courage, just so much stuff, and more importantly, life and death as a whole, because that's some of the most powerful parts of the book. At the end, when Corey sees his dad, I lost it. I lost it when he sees his dad, and his dad says, like, I gotta read this part at the end. Jennifer says she literally laughed out loud with this book too, and that is very rare. Mindy agrees the writing is really beautiful. I mean, yes, yes. And I know I'm going on and on about this, guys. I'm sorry. I just am over the moon about this book. Like, I was so excited about having this live stream. I've been excited about this all week. I was like, yeah, I can't wait to talk about Boy's Life. I can't believe I got my mom to read it. Like, she just doesn't usually read the same books as me, and so that was special too. Now, where are you? Here it is. I stop the car at the curb and I stare at the porch and see my father suddenly emerge, smiling from the front door. He looks strong and fit, like he always does when I remember him. Hey, Corey, he says, how you getting along? Just fine, sir, I answer. I knew you would be. I did all right, didn't I? Yes, sir, you did, I say. Sure do have a pretty wife and a good daughter, Corey. And those books of yours. I knew you were going to do well all the time. I knew it. Dad, do you want me to come in and stay a while? Come in here? He leans against the porch column. Why would you want to do that, Corey? Aren't you lonely? I mean, it's so quiet here. Quiet, he laughs heartily. Sometimes I wish it was quiet. It's not a bit quiet here. But it's empty, isn't it? It's full to the brim, my father says. He looks up at the sun over the hills of spring. You don't have to come back here to see them, Corey, or to see me either. You really don't. You don't have to leave what is to visit what was. You've got a good life, Corey, better than I dreamed. How's your mom doing? She's happy. I mean, she misses you, but life is for the living, he tells me in his fatherly voice. Now go on and get on with it instead of wanting to come in this old house with a saggy floor. Yes, sir, I say, but I can't leave yet. He starts to go in, but he pauses too. Corey, he says. Yes, sir. I'll always love you, always. And I'll always love your mother. And I am so very happy for the both of you. Do you understand? I nod. You'll always be my boy, Dad says. And then he returns to the house, and the porch is empty. Earlier, I didn't just cry with you guys, but earlier when I reread that, I was like tearing up, and I had to blow my nose afterwards. Like that part, she says I am already crying again. Like, I know I kind of got teary a little bit. But I straight up cried earlier when I was reviewing my notes, and I definitely cried the first time. I cried for two reasons. One, because that part's so beautiful, and it really, tugs at the heartstrings of missing somebody you love who might have passed on, and also for yearning for the days that can never be again. But also, I cried because I didn't want this book to be over. Like, this is the first time I've ever felt like this, and maybe this is why I've become so quickly obsessed with this book and with this author, is because a book has never made me feel like this ever, and it's such a lovely and amazing and overwhelming feeling because you don't want the feeling to go away. I've had books where the book that I read about 2 years ago, I'm not a lifelong reader like a lot of you might be who are watching right now, or maybe even after the fact, who are watching this after I'm done streaming. I know a lot of people who watch my channel just they've loved reading all their lives. Me, I didn't know I loved to read. I didn't know what I liked to read. And so I just discovered this love of reading more so during the pandemic, like in the last 2 years. And then I read this one book called The Good Demon. And it's like, there was nothing like overly special about the book, except that the premise was interesting, but it really like captured me. It was the first book since Harry Potter that I really really enjoyed and like flipped through super fast, and that it didn't feel like a chore to read. And so I then, wanted to keep going. And so I kept reading and reading and reading. And now, I've been reading and finding books I love, but never has a book touched me, including Harry Potter. And I love Harry Potter. Like, Harry Potter was the first ever book that I truly like adored. But this is the first book that I truly like, my mind is blown. Like, it's my all-time favorite. I never expected to find like an all-time favorite book and to feel this passionately. Like, before, if somebody would have asked me what is your favorite book before Boy's Life, I probably would have said Harry Potter, the first Harry Potter, because that was the first book that I was like, yeah, and I felt like I loved the universe. But this one just, it's different. It hits different in a different way. It touches me in a different way. And yeah, I just can't say enough about how I feel about this book. It's marvelous for me. Hold on. My dog is sitting outside in the hallway, outside my door, waiting for me to finish. That's my door right there. That's pretty funny. He's just sitting there. He's waiting for me because he can't come in because the door is closed. That's so cute. Minus the glowing eyes, but that's funny. All right, guys, I don't want to cut off anybody. I know this has been going long already. Thank you guys for sticking with me, but I just want to like talk about it for a few more minutes. I was actually trying to find some discussion questions online about this book because I wanted to dive in deeper, but really I couldn't find a lot of like in-depth questions. But I do, just to reiterate again, I do think it's really special how it touches on racism, and it's really powerful how he wrote about it. And I think he wrote about it in a really respectful way, and a way that was thought-provoking, so that young people who do read this, I think, will get a sense of, what people had to face back then and even today. I think it was really well represented. And again, I love the lady character. I could hear my boyfriend outside the door. He's talking to Jackson, my dog. Yeah, like here, I love this. Oh, this is on page 225 of my copy, and it's the lady talking about, don't be in a rush to grow up. So this is one of the best parts in the book. She says, I have seen many boys come and go, she said. I've seen some grow up and set roots, and some grow up and move away. The years of a boy's life pass so fast, Corey. She smiled faintly. Boys want to hurry up and be men, and then comes a day they wish they could be boys again. But I'll tell you a secret, Corey. Want to hear it? I nodded. No one, Mrs. Neville whispered, ever grows up. I frowned. What kind of secret was that? My dad and mom were grown up, weren't they? So were Mr. Dollar, Chief Marchette, Dr. Parrish, Reverend Lavoy, the lady, and everybody else over 18. They may look grown up, she continued, but it's a disguise. It's the clay of time. Men and women are still children deep in their hearts. They still would like to jump and play, but that heavy clay won't let them. They'd like to shake off every chain the world's put on them, take off their watches and neckties and Sunday shoes, and return naked to the swimming hole, if just for one day. They'd like to feel free and know that there's a mama and daddy at home who will take care of things and love them no matter what. Even behind the face of the meanest man in the world is a scared little boy trying to wedge himself into a corner where he can't be hurt. She put aside the papers and folded her hands on the desk. I have seen plenty of boys grow into men, Corey, and I want to say one word to you. Remember. Remember? Remember what? Everything, she said, and anything. Don't you go through a day without remembering something of it, and tucking that memory away like a treasure, because it is. And memories are sweet doors, Corey. They're teachers and friends and disciplinarians. When you look at something, write it down. When you look at something, don't just look, see it. Really see it. See it so when you write it down, somebody else can see it too. It's easy to walk through life deaf, dumb, and blind, Corey. Most everybody you know or ever will or ever meet will. They'll walk through a parade of wonders and they'll never hear a peep of it. But you can live 1,000 lifetimes if you want to. You can talk to people you'll never set eyes on and lands you'll never visit. She nodded, watching my face. And if you're good and you're lucky and you have something worth saying, then you might have the chance to live on long after. She paused, measuring her words, long after she finished. So I love that. That's so powerful. Oh, so good. Jennifer says, I've been a reader since I was a child, and Boy's Life touched me in a way I've never experienced. That makes me so happy. I'm so glad you read it. Oh, God, that makes me so, ecstatic, honestly. And I was hoping that, by me recommending it, because I know I have a horror channel, and that a lot of people that I talk with and that who watch me, they primarily read horror as well. I was hoping that they would take a chance and know that it's not horror going in, so that when they do pick up Boy's Life and they read it, they know they're not going to get a horror story, but just a beautiful story, so that when they get into it, they can appreciate it and love it and, just, I guess, savor it while they're reading it. So I really hope more people do pick it up and love it. Just the satisfaction of my mom picking it up, just to reiterate that for a fifth time, I just think that was really marvelous. And I tried to convince my cousin Dana, who also, she loves to read, but she doesn't read horror. And I was like, that's why you have to read Boy's Life. Read it, please read it. Jennifer said, this passage made me cry. It hit me so hard. Hold on to the magic of childhood and the beautiful parts of life. I know, just reading it out of context and, in my voice, it makes it sound cheesy. I don't want people who may be watching who have not read it, which I don't know. I think my friend is going to be watching and he hasn't read it, but I hope, not too many people are watching right now who haven't read it, because I feel like when you are reading it in context, you know how beautiful it is. It doesn't sound hokey. It doesn't sound like he's trying to impress you. That's another thing I love about his writing. Some flowery language, it almost comes off like the author's trying to impress you or just use big words. I never felt like that with McCammon, in my opinion. I never felt like he was trying to impress me. I felt like he was trying to impart a feeling that he had while growing up, and he was just trying to impart some of himself in it. But I will say, I read that the character that represents McCammon in the book is not Corey. It's actually Vernon. Vernon, the naked guy. Now, McCammon's not walking around in his town naked or anything. What I mean is, Vernon, if you remember his backstory from when Corey has dinner with him, Vernon tried to publish a novel, but the publishers were very dismayed about how it seemed to be just about a small town. And they're like, oh, you've got a murder mystery at the core. And this was a great little wink to the reader, because McCammon actually had the same experience with this story. So he brought it to his publishers, who had been used to him writing horror books. And they were like, we want the murder mystery to be a bigger part of the story. Let's lose this small town part. It's too much about the small town. Let's change it. And McCammon was like, no, I'm not changing it. And so it was published. And yes, it became one of his books that he's most proud of, and a book that will last, and a book that has touched tons of people. And it's one of his books that he talks about it being one of those books that are on reading lists, required reading lists. And he's so proud of that. But at the same time, it hurt him and really affected his confidence that he had this experience where they were like, we don't want this small, it made him question things. And for a time, actually, McCammon stepped away from publishing work and writing. There was a 10-year gap where he didn't write anything. And then he came back and he wrote I think it's called Speaks the Nightbird. Is that it? Yeah, Speaks the Nightbird. It's a series of books which I do intend on reading, and I'm very excited to read that series. But yes, thank you. My butler has brought me. Oh yeah, he's brought me some beverages to indulge in. I just want to show you guys this cool. Hi, Jackson. My dog's now finally able to be in here. You want to say hello? Never mind, he's going and hiding. He always sniffs my books. Anyway, what I'm drinking tonight is pecan praline whiskey and cream liqueur. Just bought this. I've never tried it, so thank you. Just so I don't get parched. Anyway, cheers, guys. I'm going to be wrapping up soon. Jackson. Go ahead, Jackson. You don't want to be stuck in here. You'll start whining once the door is closed. We're trying to get him to go out. Go ahead. Go ahead. Or you can stay. Don't whine at the door then. All right, guys. As I wrap things up, just right before I leave, anything else you want to shout out about McCammon overall, about Boys Life overall, about any specific scenes, characters, ratings, whatever you want to say, here is your chance because I love hearing you guys' opinions. It's never just about me. Although I will, even if you don't like it, that's okay. But I will tout this book for all time. I mean, I will praise this book for forever in a day. I don't care, but it, so it's okay if you don't like it, but I will disagree and say it's wonderful, it's amazing. But I will respect your opinion if you do not like it. Although I was arguing with the reviewers who were like, it's trash, it was boring. I mean, I was arguing, but still, I would not ever, try to shame people for their opinions, especially friends here. Ooh, Mindy! Mindy says she hopes to read Usher's Passing in October as well. I might nominate that as my potential book club, like my official book club pick. It would be my, second McCammon book that would be nominated, but I'm really so many people are expressing interest in reading that this fall anyway. It might be perfect time and just to show it again. I mean, lovely. And the paperback looks awesome too. But unfortunately, I don't own very many McCammon books. I own this, the paperback. I own Boys Life in paperback and hardcover. But in terms of good condition books, that's all I have. Every other book I have by McCammon, which is just Nightboat and Bethany's Sin, they're really in rough shape. Mindy has the paperback of, I think, Usher's Passing, she's saying. So Jackson left the room because he wanted to leave, and now he's pushing at the door again. My dog is crazy. Oh, wow. It tastes like pralines. Wow, that's crazy. I do recommend this liqueur. If you guys have a Total Wine, they might have it. This is delicious. Melissa said, yes, we should read that for the book club in October. Okay, well, I'm going to nominate it for October. But first up, by the way, a side note it's a sidebar really, before we leave. I am thinking of nominating, I'm going to put it up to a vote, but for September, I am thinking The Amulet by Michael McDowell, another guy who writes a lot of Southern set books. McCammon, Boys Life is set in the South, but so is Mystery Walk, and so is Gone South. In fact, Gone South, I'm extra excited to read because parts are set in my home state of Louisiana. So I'm excited about that to see how McCammon writes about Louisiana. It's going to be just great to see, what he says about the state, how he describes everything, the wonderful language he's going to use in just, in description of, the bayous. I mean, I don't know where exactly in Louisiana it takes place, but I can't wait to get to that one and just to see how it plays out. But yes, so Michael McDowell, I'm going to nominate The Amulet. He writes a lot of Southern set horror books. So The Elementals I read, I believe that was also set in Alabama. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, but The Elementals I loved. But yeah, I'm thinking of nominating The Amulet and also, I had another book in mind. I know I'm going to be reading Harvest Home with Kelly's book club, I believe. That's her September pick, right, Kelly? It's Harvest Home that you're reading for September. I got to think of what else I could nominate, but my one idea for a nomination for September is The Amulet. But yes, for October, I'll nominate Usher's Passing, and if you guys want it, please vote. But I have a feeling it'll definitely at least be one of the reads. And Jennifer says she's down for October for that one. So yay, so many people are down for the October read. That's awesome. Jennifer says Michael McDowell is an Alabama native too. Shout out to Bama. Oh, I didn't know he was actually from Alabama. That's cool. So both he and McCammon from Alabama. That's awesome. I had no idea. But it makes sense since they both set a lot of their books in the South and specifically in Alabama. That's awesome. And yeah, I think they do a great job with the setting, with capturing the feel. That's another thing that I thought was a strength of the book. You could really feel where it was set. I will say it seemed like it was cooler in Alabama in the fall than it is here. And maybe in the 60s that was true, but with global warming and everything, oh man. I see everyone Halloween shopping, and I did go Halloween shopping last weekend. But it just does not feel like fall. Like, I know fall is right around the corner. We're almost a month away from the official first day of fall. But does it feel like it here in Louisiana? Heck no. I mean, part of the reason it doesn't feel like it is because hurricane season, I get stressed out every time this time of year comes along, I get really stressed and nervous. So that's partly why this doesn't feel like fall because I'm still worrying about hurricanes. Hurricanes go hand in hand with summer to me. So I think that's why. But yeah, I mean, in the book during the fall, he was like, making it seem like the air was crisp outside. I'm like, I don't even feel like it gets like that around here anymore. Mindy says, been wanting to read Cold Moon Over Babylon by Michael McDowell. I want to read that one too. Heck, I might nominate 2 Michael McDowell books for September because I want to read either The Amulet or that. I've heard great things about both Cold Moon and The Amulet by him. Mindy said she really liked The Elementals. So did I. It was a wonderful setting. Another really like a setting that you could actually feel like you were there. You really felt the heat in The Elementals. So that was really well described. Very well done. And Jennifer agrees. The way that McDowell writes about the heat and humidity is spot on in The Elementals. Totally agree. I mean, I was sweating just reading that book and thinking about the setting. I was like, oh, I could feel that because Louisiana, not that far, we feel the heat too. We feel the heat literally. Jennifer said, yeah, I was wondering about how cool early fall was in this book. Yeah, I know. Just because the way you described it, it felt like very comfortable, and I'm just not used to that anymore for fall time, and it's sad. It's sad that I cannot think of a fall time. I'm just trying to see if I have anything important marked before. Like I said, I love the part about the dad saying it's never too late to fix a mistake, as long as you want to. Oh, the part about death. I do want to say this before I go. That I thought I had known death in Rebel's flat, blank stare, in the last goodbye of Mrs. Neville, in the Russian gurgle of air as a car with a man at the wheel sank into cold depths. I was wrong, because death cannot be known, it cannot be befriended. If death were a boy, he would be a lonely figure standing at the playground's edge, while the air rippled with other children's laughter. If death were a boy, he would walk alone. He would speak in a whisper, and his eyes would be haunted by knowledge no human can bear. It's just so beautiful. I can't say that enough. I know I say the phrase, I can't say that enough, but when you are talking about McCammon and the magnificent writing, I mean, you got to say these things over and over. You got to repeat yourself, apparently, like I am doing. Well, guys, I have droned on so long. Thank you so much for sticking with me. Thank you so much for those of you who read this book with me and for my book club, and those of you who joined, even though you might have already read this book in the past. Thank you so very much. And for anyone who's watching after the fact, after I've stopped streaming live, please leave your comments and thoughts below. Even though you weren't able to watch live, please tell me what you rated the book, why you liked it, or in rare cases, I think, why you may not have liked it. I hope no one disliked it who read it for my book club. That would make me sad, because I hate when people dislike a book that I've recommended. It makes me feel a little bad, but it's all okay. We all have our own opinions, and it's okay to agree to disagree as long as we do it in a respectful way. I'm always up for that. So thank you guys again. And again, once again, share your opinions if you're watching afterwards. And thanks to you guys who watch live. Thank you, especially to Melissa, Jennifer. Thank you so much, Mr. Morningstar. Thank you, Mindy. An extra 2,000 times thank you to Mr. Morningstar once again. Triple thank you. Thank you, Kelly. I can't wait to do our live stream. Thank you, Williams Library. Thank you, Mikey. You made me laugh. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Cool Gamer. I hope I didn't leave anybody out. If I did, I don't mean to. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you, CS. I really, really enjoy talking about books with you guys. You made my night, and you always make my day when we have book chats and just when I can interact with all of you guys. But for this time, that is it for me. Till next time, you guys know what you can do. Keep on killing it. Bye, guys. Have a great night or day, depending on when you watch this. Bye. You guys rock.